This morning, the United Arab Emirates woke up to a stark reality. 3 drones crossed its western border and entered restricted airspace. 2 were intercepted by air defenses. The third made it through, striking an electrical generator just outside the inner perimeter of the Barakah nuclear power plant and setting it on fire. The fire has since been contained. The IAEA confirmed no injuries, no radiation release, and that all 4 reactors remain in normal operation. 1 unit briefly relied on emergency diesel generators. The plant's safety systems held. And yet, if you think that means this is not an enormous deal, you are fundamentally misreading this moment. Think about what Barakah actually represents. It generates roughly 40 terawatt-hours of clean electricity every year, supplying approximately 25% of the UAE's total electricity needs. That is equivalent to the entire annual power demand of Switzerland. It avoids 22.4 million tons of carbon emissions annually, the same as taking nearly 5 million cars off the road. This is not a symbolic target. This is the backbone of the UAE's civilian energy infrastructure, built with South Korean KEPCO engineering, with the final unit completing commercial operations in 2024. Attacking a nuclear power plant during a ceasefire does not just cross a military line. It crosses an international legal threshold that even active warring parties have historically respected. The global framework built around that principle exists precisely because the consequences of getting it wrong are not measured in casualties. They are measured in contamination zones that span generations. IAEA Director General Rafael Grossi responded immediately, expressing what he described as grave concern and stating that military activity threatening nuclear safety is unacceptable. That is not boilerplate language. That is the head of the United Nations nuclear watchdog issuing a public condemnation within hours of the strike. UAE Deputy Prime Minister Sheikh Abdullah bin Zayed called it a treacherous terrorist attack, a flagrant violation of international law, the United Nations Charter, and the principles of humanitarian law. Qatar described it as a blatant violation, a serious threat to regional security, and said the attack crossed all red lines. The diplomatic language across the region shifted dramatically within hours, and that shift matters because it tells you something important about where this conflict is heading. Now, here is the detail that has been slightly buried in the breaking news cycle. The UAE has officially declined to publicly attribute this attack to Iran. That is a deliberate, calculated choice. When a country reserves the right to respond while declining to formally name the responsible party, it is weighing a response it does not yet want to
must
announce.
act decisively to
The
prevent
pattern of
further
these attacks,
escalation.
the trajectory
Our
they came
security
from,
depends on it.
and the context of everything that has unfolded since February 28th all point overwhelmingly in one direction. The UAE has faced repeated Iranian missile and drone attacks since the United States and Israel began operations against Iran on February 28th. Despite the ceasefire agreement between Iran and the United States announced on April 8th, drone attacks targeting the UAE resumed earlier this month. That is not an ambiguous picture. That is a pattern with a very clear author. What makes this morning's strike so operationally significant, beyond the legal and diplomatic dimensions, is the timing. Iran launched a drone at a nuclear facility while a ceasefire is nominally in place, while diplomatic talks between Washington and Tehran are at a complete standstill, and while the United States military has 15,000 personnel and over 100 aircraft actively deployed in the region under Operation Project Freedom. U.S. President Donald Trump spoke by phone with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Sunday, and the two discussed Iran. Netanyahu told his cabinet that morning that Israel's eyes are open regarding Iran and that Israel is prepared for any scenario. When the U.S. President and the Israeli Prime Minister are on the phone about Iran on the same morning a nuclear plant gets hit, you are not in a holding pattern. You are watching the next phase take shape in real time. So what does today actually mean? Iran crossed a threshold this morning that it cannot uncross. Attacking a nuclear power plant during a ceasefire, regardless of what the final attribution determination says, changes the political calculus for every party involved. It changes what the UAE can accept without responding. It changes what Washington can absorb without acting. It changes what Israel can tolerate without striking. And it changes the international community's tolerance for whatever Iran does next. The IAEA does not issue grave concern statements lightly. Qatar and every Gulf neighbor condemning the attack in the same news cycle is not a coincidence of diplomatic timing. It is a coalition hardening in real time. The dominoes are not falling yet, but they are all standing upright, leaning toward each other. And someone in Tehran this morning gave the table a very deliberate shove. Whether anyone in Washington, Abu Dhabi, or Jerusalem reaches out to stop the first one from falling is the only question that matters right now. And based on everything, the military posture, the diplomatic language, the intelligence coordination, and the silence from Tehran, the answer does not look encouraging. Keep watching this space closely. Subscribe if you are not already, because the next 72 hours in this conflict are going to move fast. Drop your read on what happens next in the comments. This is a story that is still being written, and you need to be paying attention.